There's an opinion I and I'm sure many players have towards champions in League, more specifically towards new ones. I think I speak for a decent portion of the player base when I say it would be really nice if Riot spent a year or two halting all new releases and instead focused on reworking and updating old champions. Back in June of 2020, there was a Reddit post that went over how Riot's been neglecting old champions who desperately need a rework in favor of making new ones. In that post, Riot made a response in which he was thinking about a certain number of picks to give a VGU to or some kind of meaningful update, like Skarner, who did get his a while back, Shyvana, Nocturne, Rammus, Udyr, who also got his, Quinn, Shaco, Tryndamere, and cho'gath. For a long while, the community has been patiently waiting for Riot to rework them so the entire roster could have some semblance of congruity in ability and visual design. But compared to give or take the 3 or 4 VGUs they did every year between 2015 to 2020, the champion design team's been really slowing down on their rework initiative. The last meaningful one we got was Skarner almost a year and a half ago, and the one before Skarner was Asol a little over a year before Skarner. Mind you, they have been working on mid-scopes a fair bit, which are meaningful enough to be considered reworks, but certainly not on the level of full visual and gameplay updates. Before we talk about reworks though, let's talk about some new developments because this might be the most interesting sponsor I've ever gotten in my life. Today's video is sponsored by a movie. Universal Pictures is teaming up with Buff and Overwolf to celebrate the release of The Bad Guys 2, the one that should be coming out tomorrow in the States actually, and I believe it came out in the UK this past week. Funnily enough, I saw ads for the movie on Twitch and on TV while watching American football. Little did I know I would be sponsored by it. Bit of a primer in case you guys don't know what this is about. The Bad Guys 2 is a sequel movie that has the Bad Guys group come out of retirement and join a female criminal squad for one final gig, continuing from the events of the first movie. So if you saw the first one, then definitely be sure to check out this one, and for those who haven't seen the first one, I recommend watching both of them. Additionally, there's an achievement-based showdown on League called the Bad Guys 2 Good vs Bad Challenge, which has you complete a set of 4 challenges within 2 weeks. You can participate by downloading the Buff app, which I'm sure most of you already know is a platform that offers you points to redeem for prizes by simply playing the game. The first 350 people to finish the challenge will get 600 Buff points each, and one of them will win an Alienware M18 gaming laptop. There's no cost to entering this, all you have to do is download the app and join the challenge. So don't hesitate to join in by using my link on screen or in the description below. Also, once again, don't forget to check out the movie, maybe consider watching it sometime this weekend. Anyways though, let's get back to the video. So what happened? Why did Riot essentially stop doing these despite how well received many of them were and how instrumental they were in modernizing the game's experience? We'll be discussing that for today. To better understand why Riot putting the VGU initiative on the back burner is so significant, we need to ascertain why reworks are so important for League as a whole, since that will serve as a point of reference and context for why they don't really do them anymore. First and foremost, the champions released today are conceptualized, balanced, and formatted using, unsurprisingly, a completely different set of standards than the champions made before. This is due in part to the game not only having access to better technology and wherewithal to implement these things, such as better graphics, skin design, and abilities, but they have older champions to use as a framework for what has already been done. For example, if you were to make a tank champion designed around protecting allies, you have Braum who can block projectiles for people, Shen who can teleport to a teammate coming under fire, or Poppy who can stop dashes and knock enemies away. So when designing Tahm Kench, they wanted to tap into a different aspect that hasn't been explored yet, like becoming a literal human shield by swallowing his teammate and effectively superimposing his health bar over theirs. Every new champion has to stand out in some way, shape, or form. In the early days, you can get by on a champion with a basic Q, W, E, and ultimate, but much like how Yu-Gi-Oh went from simple monster cards with only one ability to super mega ultra giga 1v9 immune to everything 5000 attack 1 turn KO Thanos boss monsters, to make new content appealing, it has to one-up the existing content. After years and years of this though, the discrepancy between old and modern champions begins to have a strain on the game's experience and balance. Many such cases on Twitter and Reddit, you see people joking about how someone like Vladimir with this awful in-game model can exist in the same title as Yunara with all of her details. Or even from a gameplay point of view, you have a champion like Bel'Veth with a million things to explain in her gameplay, meanwhile Nasus gets bonus lifesteal for his passive and bonks people with Q. Such one-dimensionality facing against a more multilateral champion makes for a very touch-and-go situation. You had to somehow find a way for the likes of Malphite, cho'gath, and Tryndamere to be equally as viable as Zambessa, Cassante, and Zeri, who intrinsically have the faculty to do a lot more and achieve a lot more. That's why older champions often feel so annoying to go up against. Without any real room for skill expression, success or failure is contingent on how you tune their numbers, leading to end results whether overpowered or hot ass. VGUs are meant to address that by modernizing the old, one-note champs to have the same level of expression and agency while still retaining the essence of what they were before, and for the most part, even with the ones that were overdone like Akali and Irelia, Virtually every champion that got a visual gameplay update came out on the other side all the better for it. Some of the best designed champions visually and gameplay wise are Reworks. Galio was meant to be that anti-magic protector champion and they made him such. Poppy was a complete mess of a disruptor, and the Rework was one of the most creative reimaginings I've ever seen. There are simply far too many to count. Warwick, Nunu, Fiddlesticks, Volibear, Urgot, Aatrox, Pantheon, Evelynn, Swain, Shen, banger after banger after banger. More surprising is how Champion Reworks got the same amount of applause and fanfare from the community as new releases. People were equally as excited for each VGU as they were for every new champion, so much so that Riot basically alternated between Rework and New Edition. One moment they released Camille, the next they came out with Rice, then Tazaya and Rakan, then Yorick or something like that. It also helped that they went out of their way to visually update the champions too, from clunky low-poly models with humorously oversized feet to impressive visuals that still remind you of what they looked like before. I remember Fiddle's update changed him from a joke scarecrow to an Eldritch horror that literally jump-scared everyone when they saw his beautifully directed cinematic reveal. VGUs are objectively fantastic for the game and allowed so many once neglected and forgotten champions to be granted a second lease on life, an opportunity to try again with a playstyle reminiscent of their past but with the same tools and design philosophy of today. I might sound like a boomer, but trust me when I say 2015 to 2018 was the best time to play League. People might get hyped about a new champion coming out here and there today, but you can't even begin to imagine the pandemonium that would ensue throughout the community for certain reworks. Like I said, they were basically for all intents and purposes brand new champions. Which begs the question, why did Riot discontinue making VGUs when empirically and evidently they were a major contributor to the health and sustainability for the game? I think it comes down to three factors, and sadly they all more or less tie into the gradual enshittification of League that's been happening over the past 2 years. First reason, novelty. When it comes to business, making new stuff always, and I mean always, offers a better ROI than updating old stuff, especially if you can fix the problems of the old stuff with that new stuff. Being a for-profit company, Riot of course endeavors to optimize their bottom line. By making new champions, they have a new shiny toy they can market, make skins for, and whatnot. Making new champions always carries more opportunity for money in a number of ways. Firstly, if you rework a champion, the vast majority of players already have that champion, so the company loses out on possible revenue from people buying new champions with RP. Secondly, reworking a champion also means reworking skins, which again players probably already have. It would be a complete PR disaster if Riot were to delete a champion, re-release a reworked iteration, and then force you to rebuy all the skins again. Skins represent the majority of Riot's income from League. Even one skin can procure millions of dollars. Imagine putting in the work to redesign 5 skins that most people already have. They're basically doing all of that work for free. Alternatively, they could release a new champion, which has the benefit of complete novelty, naturally leading to more sales. Even if a champion rework is super hyped up and offers a vastly different experience in gameplay than what it was before, there's still a non-negligible portion of the player base who associates the new champion identity with the old one and probably doesn't care too much about them. Sure, Yorick's update made him way more popular than his original version ever could, but it's still Yorick. People who don't like his design or fantasy before probably still don't like him now. This also kinda ties to why so many champions nowadays are humans. Human champions tend to sell better in skins. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big monster champion enjoyer. I love me some Mundo, Renekton, Mordekaiser and stuff. But Pantheon's got me feeling a certain type of way, not gonna lie. It's no coincidence most of the game's popular skin targets are human champions. People can talk about how good and monster champions are all they want. The fact remains the world at large resonates more with characters that at least somewhat look like them. This isn't a recent thing either. You think Lux and Misfortune got the most amount of skins during the 2010s for no reason? They saw how profitable it was and then went, what if we made 1,000,000 Luxes and Misfortunes? What if we made 1,000,000 six-pack guys with chiseled jawlines? On rare occasions they'll make a monster champion like Naafiri, but everywhere else, they're trying to make what ultimately sells. And to be fair, I can't blame them. It's not morally reprehensible to focus on the new instead of the old. If memory serves, I once read a post or an interview where a Riot designer mentioned that they actually lose money by reworking champions, especially since most of the ones we have left are monsters: kog'maw, cho'gath, Rammus, Malphite, Nocturne. Second reason, constraints, which sort of continues on the concept of novelty. When designing a new champion, the team's at liberty to do whatever the hell they want. If they want a champion who can do ABC things in XYZ fashion, they're within their right to do so. Said lack of constraints gave rise to the 200 Years champions, where the design team got a little too cavalier in what they allowed a champion to do. At the same time, again, I can't really blame them. For how egregious Aphelios, Yone, Viego, and whatnot are, you can't deny that they're some of the most fun champions to play. Who doesn't enjoy playing someone who can temporarily transform into any champion they just killed, or a champion with 5 weapons, or a champion who can rush you down from a mile away and make insane plays? It's very easy to fall into the trap of being super hyped about something that you fail to account for balance and consequences. You can do so much more on a new champion without any established boundaries. Meanwhile, reworking an old champion is a much more arduous task. You have to design a modern playstyle while still finding a way to maintain the essence of their older kit. Some are easier to work with than others, like how they didn't really change that much for Pantheon and Dr. Mundo, but for others it can be significantly tougher. All VGU targets have something making them unpleasant to play or play against, but that something could also be what gives them their identity. For instance, Tryndamere is known for several properties. He's got that spinny slash with a funny animation. He's also the early game RNG champion who can crit you over and over at level 1. He also has that chicken head that pops up over people that get hit by his W while running away. But none of those come close to the real aspect of his identity, Undying Rage. Undying Rage is a bullshit move. 5 seconds of death immunity literally only works because Tryndamere is a terrible champion otherwise. If you gave something like this to a modern day champion, the community will permaban them. Now as I recall, unfortunately, they mentioned how they plan to keep Undying Rage, or some semblance of it during his VGU. That aspect alone hamstrings how they can design him. Every other champion has something to them that non-negotiably must carry over to their new iteration. Depending on what it is, it can make a modern day version of them very difficult to make. Modernizing a champion also takes a lot of work and resources overall. Accounting for how many pre-existing skins they have, that's more work added to their plate. They have to create new animations, new artworks, new models, and whatnot for every skin the champion has. And remember, all of this with a very low profit return considering most people likely had those champions and at least some of their skins. Comparatively, it would be far more pragmatic and profitable to just make a new champion. Reason 3. Backlash. Even if a VGU gets well received by the player base, there will always be people who feel disillusioned by the rework. The highest profile instance of this was of course Aatrox. New Aatrox is great, one of the best designed champions in the game, but enough players were upset over the loss of old Aatrox to spark discussion on whether they could have just made a new champion with a different name. Skarner came out better from his VGU, but many people miss the old one, or they miss the old Mordekaiser, the old Irelia, so on and so forth. On the other hand, making a new champion poses almost no risk. People will quit from losing their favorite champion to a rework, but I don't think I've heard of anyone quitting from a new champion coming out. When taking a look at the current VGU targets we have, a number of them are decently popular. Not Zed or Yasuo level, but certainly nowhere close to old Asol or Yorick. Enough people play Malphite, Tryndamere, Shaco, Nocturne, and cho'gath for it to pose a substantial enough risk to rework them, and I don't think Riot wants to bleed out in player base anymore than they already have. With all that being said, why were they so much more enthusiastic about reworks despite the aforementioned 3 factors having been a thing even back then? For one, League was growing, Riot was making hella money, so they could afford to rework champions because they probably still made profit from all of them, or they had more capital to work with compared to now where I'd imagine their margins are not as great as they used to be, which might explain why there's been a lot of company downsizing, discontinuation of the Forge, and mass layoffs. Secondly, and probably more importantly, they've just about handled all the urgent ones. Not saying the champions that still need a VGU are fine, but they're still playable and have a distinguished role in the game. Quinn isn't a bad champion in her current state, neither is Nocturne or kog'maw. They're not great mind you, but they're certainly far from, old Yorick or Poppy or Taric or Nunu or Urgot levels of awful. Meanwhile, Riot's also been fixing up a good number of champs through mid-scopes like Olaf, Tahm Kench, Taliyah, Sivir, Jax, and whatnot. So I guess you can say they have been reworking champions, just maybe not to the same extent of a total visual overhaul like they used to in the past. They also worked on visual updates like how they modernized Ahri, Lee Sin, Caitlyn, Teemo, LeBlanc through art and sustainability updates. I'll give credit where it's due, it's not like they've been on their ass doing nothing. Their end goal right now might be to just get champions to a quote-unquote good enough state and not waste any more effort and working capital beyond that point. Now, I for one think that for the sake of longevity, if they want League to go another 10 more years, they'll have to eventually address all the old champions sooner or later, and from my perspective, there's no time like the present. Goodwill towards Riot is the lowest it's ever been, and even if it means taking one step back in profits and revenue, pulling a crazy stunt like releasing 5 VGUs in the span of half a year could be a worthy enough gamble to bring back some hope in the future of the game. I said it before and I'll say it again, people loved the visual gameplay update initiative, possibly even more so than the new champions. It's a shame we're no longer getting them anymore. I don't think they need to make 4 or 5 a year like they used to, maybe 2 a year would be good. But they haven't even been able to do that. What do you guys think about this? Do you believe there's another reason behind Riot stopping VGUs? Let me know in the comments down below. That's it for today, so if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.